You were doing well. That's what you told yourself. You had a job, a salary that cleared 4 digits every month, a bank account that didn't go to zero anymore, not like before. You were 24, maybe 25, the age where adulthood starts to feel real, but still has that soft edge, like you're playing a role and getting better at it every week. You walk past dealerships. You notice the cars without meaning to, the way the metal caught the light at a certain angle, the quiet confidence of a clean hood. You didn't stop. Not yet, but you noticed. There was this one evening. You were stuck in traffic, watching a black sedan glide into the lane next to you. The driver didn't look stressed. Didn't look like he was calculating anything. He just moved. You thought about what that felt like. You got home. You checked your account balance. Not because you needed to, just to see a number. The number felt like proof of something. You didn't know yet that proof and progress are two very different things. Something had already started. You just hadn't named it yet. 6 months later, you test drove a car. Just to see. You told yourself that. The salesman had this way of talking that made everything feel inevitable. He didn't push. He just kept saying things like, at your income level, and this is the one people regret not getting. You sat in the driver's seat. Leather. Climate control. The dashboard looked like something that belonged to someone who had figured it out. You gripped the wheel. $47,000. You could do it. The financing made it clean. $640 a month. That's nothing, they said. That's 2 dinners. You left without signing. But you went back. Not that day, but you went back. And in between, there were 3 weeks of mental math. 3 weeks of telling yourself you'd calculated it right. 3 weeks of checking your salary, imagining the car in your parking spot, picturing the way people would see you differently. You didn't tell anyone you were thinking about it. That should have been the sign. When you keep something this big, this quiet, it usually means some part of you already knows. But you signed anyway. $49,800 after taxes and fees. You drove home feeling like you'd arrived somewhere. You'd actually just left. Month 3, the car still felt new. The smell was still there if you pressed your face close to the headrest. The payment came out on the 15th, and you moved money around to make it comfortable. You didn't think about the interest rate. Month 7, you checked the loan balance for the first time, not the monthly payment, the actual loan balance. The number was nearly the same as when you started. You stared at your phone for a while. $31,000 for $100 still owed. You'd paid over $4,000 and moved the needle by less than $2,000. You put the phone down. You picked it up. You put it down again. Something that had been invisible for months became suddenly, uncomfortably visible, like a sound you've been hearing without registering, and now you couldn't unhear it. You opened a calculator. You typed in the interest rate. You typed in the term. You watched the numbers tell you something that felt deeply unfair, even though you had agreed to it. You were going to pay over $11,000 in interest alone, over 5 years, for a car that started losing value the second you drove it off the lot. You sat with that. You didn't fix it. You didn't call the bank. You didn't sell the car. You just sat with it. And that night, at 11:47 p.m., you opened your phone and started reading about something called depreciation. That was the beginning of a very uncomfortable education. The car hadn't changed, but you had started to see it differently. Here's what nobody tells you about a financial mistake at this scale. It doesn't announce itself. It just becomes part of your life, part of the rhythm. You make the payment. You drive the car. You fill the tank. That's another $85 every 10 days, $3,100 a year. Insurance, another $1,800 annually. And the car is beautiful. You still think so. You don't regret it. Not out loud. Not to anyone. But something shifts at dinner tables. A friend mentions the brokerage account. Another one says something about index funds returning 11% last year. Someone shows you a screenshot of a portfolio, and it has a number in it that doesn't feel real. You nod. You change the subject. At home, you do something you've never done before. You sit down and add up what you've spent on the car since you bought it. Payments, gas, insurance, 2 oil changes, 1 tire, $14,200. In 11 months, you sit back. You think about what $14,000 could have done somewhere else. And for the first time, quietly, privately, in a way you don't say out loud to anyone, you ask yourself a question that you can't unask. What if I had put this money somewhere that grew instead of somewhere that shrinks? You close the spreadsheet. You don't open it again for 3 weeks. But the question stays. You were living one life out loud and thinking about a completely different one in silence. Year 2, you've started reading. Not casually. Seriously. Compound interest. Asset allocation. The S&P 500 going back 80 years. What $50,000 at age 24 becomes at age 44 if you leave it alone. The number is not a small number. You do the math again. $50,000 invested at an average return of 10% annually. After 5 years, $80,500. After 10 years, $129,000. After 20 years, $336,000. You stare at that last number for a long time. $336,000. From one decision. From a decision you made in a car showroom on a Saturday afternoon because the leather smelled expensive, and a salesman used a phrase, at your income level. And something happens here that is very hard to describe. It's not regret. Regret is clean. Regret has edges. This is something else. This is the moment you realize you are not the person you thought you were. You thought you were someone who made smart, careful choices. You thought you were ahead of your peers. You thought the car was a reward for doing well. But you were operating on a script that was written for you by advertising, by culture, by every movie where the man pulls up in a clean car and the world treats him differently. You weren't making a choice. You were following an instruction, and you hadn't even known to question it. That is the uncomfortable part, not the money. The money is painful but recoverable. The identity part, the realization that the version of yourself you were proud of was partly built on performance, that takes longer to process. You don't say any of this out loud. You just go quiet. People notice. They don't ask. You have been performing a version of wealth instead of building the real thing, and you had done it proudly. Year 3, you don't sell the car immediately. That would be the dramatic version of this story. That's not how real change works. Real change is quieter. It's slower. It has setbacks, and it doesn't announce itself. What you do is this. You open a brokerage account on a Tuesday evening. Nothing dramatic. Just a form. A bank connection. An initial deposit of $200 because that's what you could move without disrupting anything. $200. After the car. After the insurance. After the gas. After the loan. After the rest of life. $200. You buy into an index fund. You don't touch it for 6 weeks. 6 weeks later, you look, it's $209. That $9 means almost nothing in real terms. But psychologically, it means everything. Because it grew. You didn't do anything. You just left alone. And it grew. This is a feeling you've never had before with money. Usually money goes somewhere. It pays for something. It disappears in the direction of things. This money just sat there and got bigger. You increase the deposit to $400 the next month. You start packing lunch twice a week. Not because you have to, because the math showed you what twice a week adds up to in a year. $1,100 that used to go to the place next to your office now goes into something that compounds. It's not enough. Not yet, but you've shifted directions. And direction matters more than speed when you're just starting. You weren't rich, but you were finally moving the right way. Year 4, you refinance the car to a shorter term and a lower rate. You get rid of it 14 months early by making one extra payment every quarter. The day the loan closes, you don't feel what you expected to feel. No relief, no celebration, just a quiet acknowledgement of a chapter ending. You look at the car differently now. It's still a good car. It's still well made. It'll run for another 100,000 miles if you take care of it. But you see it clearly now. It is not an asset. It is a tool. That distinction, asset versus tool, used to feel like financial jargon. Now it feels like the clearest sentence you've ever understood. A tool loses value. A tool costs money to maintain. A tool serves a purpose and nothing more. An asset works while you sleep. An asset compounds. An asset doesn't need your attention to grow. You start having different conversations. At dinner, you don't change the subject anymore. When portfolios come up, you contribute. You ask questions. The friend who mentioned index funds 2 years ago, you call him now. He's surprised. You talk for an hour and a half. You realize how much time you spent building an image instead of building a position, not just with the car, with other things too. The clothes, the dinners, the constant low-level performance of having it together. All of it was real money. All of it went somewhere. And almost none of it was working for you while you weren't looking. You had spent years making other people's numbers grow. Now, for the first time, you were growing your own. Year 5, your portfolio is at $41,000. Not $1 million, not even close. But you put in $23,800 in total contributions. The rest is growth. The rest is compounding. The rest is money that made money without you. You run the projection again. If you continue at this rate, same monthly contribution, same average return, no dramatic changes. You cross $300,000 in 14 years. You cross $1 million in 22 years. From a Tuesday evening decision to open an account with $200, you think about the version of you at 24, sitting in a car showroom on a Saturday, gripping a steering wheel that didn't belong to him, performing certainty he didn't feel. You don't hate that version of you, but you understand him now in a way that's hard to explain to someone who hasn't made this exact mistake. He wanted to feel like he'd arrived. He didn't have a map for what arriving actually looked like. So he borrowed someone else's definition. The car, the monthly payment, the clean hood in the parking lot. He thought that was what it meant. He was wrong. Not about wanting something. The wanting was real and human. And it makes sense. He was wrong about the shape of it. Real wealth doesn't announce itself in a parking lot. It doesn't have a sound when you start the engine. It's a number in an account that you don't touch. A position that compounds in the background while you live your life. A quiet, invisible architecture that most people never build because they're too busy building the visible version, the version that depreciates. You thought this was normal. Buying the thing, financing the thing, driving the thing and calling it success. It never was. If this felt too familiar. You already know what to do. Subscribe to Noir Capital. More of this every week.